much, Mr. Jones and band. Detective Alex Johnson of the San Antonio Police Department from Texas is a very special guest today. A graduate of Xavier University with a master's degree from the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City, Detective Johnson works primarily with a threat assessment team. Their work is to identify and disrupt persons suspected of planning targeted mass violence. He and his wife, Caitlin, have 3 daughters. Alex is best known to us, though, as a member of Providence Academy's first graduating class in 2005. That means he was a freshman. He was one of you, that momentous first year. Students and guests, please welcome Detective Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Flanders. It really is an honor to be here to speak today. 20 years ago, on September 11th, 2001, I was in 9th grade. A few months after that day, I joined the Providence Academy class of 2005 on this beautiful campus, but I, like everybody else, remember exactly where I was when smoke began to rise over Lower Manhattan on that lovely Tuesday morning in New York City. I remember watching the second plane crash into the South Tower after it intentionally banked left so that its wings were at an 8 and a 2 o'clock. It was a calculated effort to deliver as deadly a blow as possible. I remember reflecting on the hatred that was necessary to have planned such a lethal maneuver. However, it was not until the following days that I heard the corresponding stories of courage and of sacrifice in the face of such terror. First responders, the firefighters, police officers, and EMS personnel who went rushing towards the carnage as others fled. Imagine just for a moment what that had to have been like. As a firefighter, switching on your light helmet as you make the conscious decision to step into the towers on floor 1 and begin that ascent with the echoing sounds of horror above you, all in the hopes of fighting an impossible fire and finding survivors. St. John wrote in his gospel, "Greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends." There are too many heroes of that day to mention in the brief time I have, so I'm just going to focus on one. Rick Rescorla was the Executive Vice President of Security at Morgan Stanley and was responsible for the safety of roughly 2,700 employees that day that were distributed throughout 22 floors. When the first plane hit the North Tower, Rescorla was in the South Tower on the 44th floor. He ignored a direct order by the Port Authority to stay put and instead grabbed a bullhorn and began the mass evacuation of thousands. His long career of leading soldiers in combat in Vietnam had forged an iron will which didn't crack under pressure. Survivors say that Rick's voice could be heard echoing throughout the tower stairwell as he sang Welsh battle hymns and patriotic songs to raise the morale of his frightened colleagues around him. Then, United Airlines Flight 175 streaked at almost 590 miles an hour until it disappeared into a plume of fire which erupted from the side of the tower. The entire building shuddered as the support columns absorbed the tremendous explosion. The ensuing blackness caused another stampede of panic in the stairwell, but Rick once again brought calm and hope. He stood by at the critical junction points which separated the stairs and the sky lounges on the way down, and there's no doubt that his efforts saved countless lives that day. Amid the turmoil, he was heard exhorting those around him with a bullhorn, yelling, "Today is a day to be proud to be an American." He was last seen on the 10th floor, going back once again to sweep for survivors, and his body was never recovered. The memory of heroes who ignored their own instinct to save themselves and instead nobly gave their lives. In New York at the Trade Center, Virginia at the Pentagon, and in a rural southwestern Pennsylvania field, they will all forever be honored in this nation's memory. Most of us will not be called to heroism of such dramatic circumstances of life and death. And thank God that's the case. But no matter what your vocation, we all have a sacred duty to defend what is true and what is good and what is beautiful. Rick Briscola understood this obligation. But the struggles often require more than just physical courage. In today's society, oftentimes, perhaps more so than ever, we need to rely on moral and spiritual courage as well. Because ultimately, the summation of our lives is made up of small, daily decisions to either do what is right or do what is easy, convenient, and often self-serving. We all stand shoulder to shoulder in that fight. Profound evil does exist in this world. The many flags that line the entrance to the school bear witness to it. But that's not the end of the story. For we are an Easter people. We trust in the ultimate victory of our Redeemer. If evil exists, then it is our lot to rise and meet it, to stand in the breach. That process begins here, in places like Providence Academy. And that's why I challenge the students here present to really engage with your teachers, engage with your peers. Think deeply about the rich subjects that you study in these hallowed halls. Because it's in these classrooms and it's in that chapel upstairs where you learn about those truths that are worth devoting your life to. It's here that you can find and grow to love those things that are worth defending with great moral, spiritual, and physical courage. It's here that you don the armor used to face the dragons of this world. So 20 years after 9/11, let's reflect on the past and pray for our future. Let us all thank the brave men and women in all branches of the military, our police officers, firefighters, and EMS personnel who stand guard while we sleep. We take for granted that when we are in danger, someone will show up in an attempt to resolve our nightmare. So now let's take a moment to thank Plymouth PD, FD, EMS, our military, and all of the first responders that are present. Sacrifices made by you and your families are deeply appreciated by this community. Let us pray that our country remains true to the profound ideals on which it was founded, which make it a beacon of light in a dark world. And finally, in remembrance of such a somber day, let us thank God that His goodness and His glory stretch beyond the veil of this fallen world and can deliver us to life everlasting. Thank you.